My name's Gary Harper, and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. My co-host is fashionably late, and we're sitting here with the Honorable Mark McLean, who is running in Ward 44, Hillsborough 44, for his seat at the New Hampshire House. Are you sure you want to go up there? You hear some of the stupid stuff that's going on up there?
Well, it makes you think twice sometimes, but yes, absolutely, I want to get back up.
Because there's like dumb stuff going. Okay, you were only out for one term, right?
Yes, I'm a former state rep for Hillsborough 15, which is Ward 8. So
right.
I served 2000.
There he is.
2014 to 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well. So when you served, do you remember any of the state reps in the hall, walking around with their shirts untucked and
in a daze?
No, I mean there's rules around decorum and dress and things like that.
Yes,
so, yes.
But the libertarians prevented us from having a vote on dress code. So Dyer, the new libertarian. He's like walking around the state in the during the session with his like shirt untucked and everything else, which it's not a big deal, but it's the decline in decorum is just getting ridiculous. And then they had what's his name up north who 10 years ago was saying some things on Reddit under a pseudonym, right?
Yeah.
Under a pseudonym, and he's saying some pretty horrible things about women. So that was brought out last week. And agreed he shouldn't have said it. It's 10 years ago. I am of the belief if you have some bad things to say, then you probably should keep them to yourself. And if you're going to put it online, you better presume somebody's going to see it. So I don't think he's necessarily that sharp. So we had a vote last week to vote whether or not he could be censured, slapped on the face, censured, or expelled. I don't think we constitutionally can expel him. I think that has to be like treason or something. But
then that's hanging. I think you can hang him for treason.
Okay. Well, then earlier, once that was on the floor as part of a bill, then Representative Frost, a freshman legislator, earlier this year had been calling everybody F this and F this on Twitter, right? Which is completely, if the thing is, once you're elected, you're representing over 3,000 people. You're not representing yourself.
Absolutely.
And you're expected to carry yourself a certain way and limit what you're able to say.
Well, I mean, I think, that's it exactly. I mean, you don't want to take yourself too seriously, and sometimes people go on the other side of things and they're just, too hoity-toity. But on the other hand, you're right. I mean, you are there to represent the people, to do their business, and as their representative, you at least want to have a modicum of decency and decorum, and that kind of thing. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want that in somebody who represented me, for sure. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, she came out, I think today or yesterday, and posted that this something about the GOP and the rape culture, implying there's a rape culture in the New Hampshire House, which is, I don't know what she's talking about.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
I don't know what that means.
I mean, I don't know where some of that stuff comes from, but it just seems to me it's a distraction, and there's more and more, and I don't know why we do have legitimate issues that we have to address, and when we go down into the weeds and stuff like that, then that's the things that we're talking about instead of the real issues. It's like when they put that legislation at the start of the session to have a committee to study New Hampshire's response to the Russian hacking. So this
really,
that was a Senate bill. So these are all distractions, and they take away because we do have some serious issues that we need to address, and they're just distractions. Bottom line. I know.
Bottom line, it's distraction, but it's also the decorum of the House is kind of declining, and it's not good. I really think both these people need to be censured.
Censured, yeah.
Because it's just we got to put a stop to it. You can't. The other thing too is if you have such a hostile environment, it'll just get to the point where you can't legislate, because everybody anybody on the other side is a jerk and you're a jerk. It's everybody hates each other instead of working with each other. I mean, you don't have to agree with the other party, but you still have to work with them.
Well, I mean, and that's, when things devolve into personalities like that, you and I served on the Judiciary Committee together, and I know that we had very principled arguments with many folks
Right.
on the other side. But at the end of the day, we were able to go down, have lunch with them, whatever, talk about a whole myriad of things, the issues and even things outside of government, and avoid making things personal. And that's just, it doesn't get you anywhere in the end.
That's exactly right. Like when we were on the judiciary together, I mean, we dealt with probably some of the most horrible pieces of legislation and partisan pieces of legislation in the House, because we were dealing with pro-life or pro-choice issues and end-of-life issues, very, very emotional issues, but we always managed to handle that with decorum and respect, even though obviously you and I disagreed with most of the Democrats and they disagreed with us. It was still a working relationship.
And that was important because when you did hit into those issues where you did agree, the relationship had not been so totally destroyed, such as, right to know or something like that,
Right.
where you could go and say, yeah, there's some common ground here, in terms of transparency of government that we want to work on. And because the relationship has not been completely damaged, you're able to go forward.
Right.
And so I tried to avoid personalities myself when it comes to legislating and focus in on the details of legislation itself.
And in case people don't know, you're running for Ward.
It's District
Ward,
44.
District 44. What's the ward?
Yeah, so District 44 is actually the Floterial District, and that's the district that was held by Andy Martell.
Yeah.
And so it consists of Ward 8 and Ward 9, which is southern Manchester, and Litchfield.
Okay.
So it's a float district, and Andy Martell held that district for several years, and as you know, he passed away just before Christmas.
Right.
And here's a guy, who was a real curmudgeon. We're talking about decorum. And, Andy certainly got into his fights with CMC and things like that. But again, he was a guy who I think, carried himself with enormous dignity in the House. He was a curmudgeon.
Right.
But, people really respected him. It's interesting when you think about Andy and you think about that last campaign of his. Andy had really not been well, and so they had kind of taken off the top of his foot, so he was on bed rest.
Right.
And so my wife and I were kind of helping him out in the last campaign, and he was saying, "Oh, Mark, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I can't get out a door knock like I used to do." Well, Andy, we'll see. The voters will decide in the end. And they came through, and he got reelected. And I think, that was because he had been able to build up that respect with the people over time, and I think that goes for a lot. And
Right.
I think, shenanigans like we're hearing about, I think in the end they wear on people the wrong way. So.
I hope so. I hope people get, just wake up and say, no, I don't want to be represented that way.
Yeah.
I mean, because I just want to say for those voters, you're an awesome legislator. I served with you on judiciary, and you're just wicked smart. You're a lot nicer person than I am, too.
Well, I don't know about that. I think, you're nice and funnier than me to boot. So
Well,
I just was listening to a sidebar on your radio show. So
Oh, that's Matt's radio. I was just on there
well,
causing trouble.
he brings out the best in you for sure. So
So backtrack. What? Because you're a chemist by trade,
a chemical engineer. Yeah.
chemical engineer.
Yeah.
How'd you get motivated to be involved in politics? Because those two aren't necessarily consistent.
Well, I mean, I was.
Do you plan on going up there and poison everybody in the State House?
No. I mean,
That's what I would do.
the first reason.
Wow. Right. Sorry.
No. Well, the reason that I was actually born. I was actually born in Canada, and I came here.
You have a birth certificate?
Yes, I do. I have, yeah. Only one. But I came here several decades ago, and it was interesting because, I served in the Royal Canadian Artillery, and I went, as you mentioned, and I got my degree in chemical engineering. And while I was an engineering student, this is 30 years ago, I was listening to a radio program on the CBC, and I tell this story sometimes to my friends. And on the radio program, there was a gentleman. He was a geneticist, and he had just won the Nobel Prize.
Right.
And so he was being
Was it
interviewed.
Barack Obama?
Well, it was not Barack. It was a couple decades before Barack. So he kind of slid in underneath there a little bit.
Right, right.
But the interviewer was talking to him. Hey, CBC interviewer, we're very impressed. That here you are, a Canadian winning the Nobel Prize, and just wanted to know what can a young Canadian do that wants to make a difference in the world. And his name was Dr. Michael Smith. He didn't think a second. He just came up with the answer right away. He said, "Move to the United States." And
why?
Well, and the CBC reporter was taken aback, and he said, "No. Maybe you misunderstood the question. What can a young Canadian with ability do within Canada to make a difference?" And he said, "Listen, if you're a young Canadian listening to this program and you have talent and ability, there is nothing that you can do within Canada that will equal your contribution from the United States, because Canada is a beautiful country. It's a wonderful country. We do a lot of things very well, but the United States does everything very well. The United States is good at everything." And I kind of poo-pooed that. I said, "Oh, that can't be. Come on." But then
That must have made a lot of people angry, huh?
Well, I mean, it was not the answer that certainly they were expecting on a CBC radio program.
Right.
But a few years later, I came down to graduate school in the United States.
Where?
At Northeastern University.
Okay.
And so I was figuring, I'll just go down for a couple of years, and then I'll go back. But no, I mean, I knew within a week of being here that I was going to be in the United States for the rest of my life, and everything came
So
home.
you're like are you one of those people that came here illegally? You mean?
No,
Did you
I
overstay your visa?
no, I did not.
That's what I'm picking
Came
up.
through Pittsburgh.
I did. No.
Between the checkpoints and
Yeah.
Oh,
Did you come in a snowmobile? Is
everything.
That how you did it?
No. I came in a station
truck,
wagon.
truck.
Yeah, probably.
No, with a station wagon.
you just
But
walk across the Canadian border.
I know. I saw it, seen it.
Right.
but it struck me at the time.
Sorry.
It struck me at the time, that he was right about the diversity of the U.S. economy, and I really think that.
What do you mean by the diversity?
I mean, you're good at everything. So, I mean, you're good in the technology sector, you're good in the energy sector, good in manufacturing. So, the United States of America really has this amazing diverse economy. And when I came to New Hampshire, over 20 years ago, I looked at the New Hampshire economy, and I really was excited by the New Hampshire advantage. I thought it was real, and we had an incredibly diverse economy. We were strong in manufacturing, strong in technology, the financial sector, and the tourism sector, all that stuff. But over time, I began to see that erode. And I was working in manufacturing, and over time, you start turning off the lights in the factories, and you start to say, what is going on? Why are we going in the wrong direction? This is not the same kind of energy that I was seeing, just a decade or two ago.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, I said, I understand the House of Representatives, you're only one person out of 400, but I'd like to add my voice to that 400.
You're not from Montrebec, though.
No, I'm from New Brunswick, which is
New
just
Brunswick.
just
So
east of Maine.
So that's like the good part.
Well, I think it's a good part.
I don't like cotton picking Quebec.
You don't?
No, they're rude.
Well, I mean,
They are wicked rude. I walked into, should I say this one? Quebec. Montreal, Quebec.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know when the kids were little, I decided to go to Quebec. I said, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Let's take the kids to Quebec. You're spending money. You would think they would want people to come up and spend money. Nope. I went into a store. It was a restaurant, and I was trying to find a bathroom because you have little kids. You got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And they just did not want to help me. They knew exactly. You knew they knew, but they were doing whatever they could not to help you. And it was so rude. I just have no desire to ever go back.
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
horrible.
they went through some real culture wars up there We're talking like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
where they had a separatist vote. I think it was back in
Yes, I remember,
1995, and they had
They're like California. They wanted to
yeah,
secede.
and they had a vote. So there was a lot of animosity and basically a lot of fracture activity going on up there. And I think a lot of that has stabilized, and I hope it has.
No,
because,
I went up there. Remember? Did you go with us? Were you with us with O'Brien when we went up to Canada?
Oh, absolutely.
We went up.
Northern Pass. We
yeah,
met
we-
the people
we-
at Northern Pass.
Yeah, we
yes.
went up to speak to the people at Northern Pass with O'Brien and a few of the members of leadership, and I went to this mall in what city is that? Montreal, right? It's a mall underground. Is that Montreal?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. People were like not friendly. They were unfriendly, and they were just.
Well,
I'll give you an example. I took a picture. There's this little kid, and babies when they're in between, just learning to walk, they kind of waddle.
yeah.
Well, I just think that's the cutest thing on the planet.
Yes.
So I took a picture.
Yeah.
The guy came over to me and said, "You just take pictures?" Well, yeah. So he made me delete the picture. Why?
Wow.
What was I going to do with a cotton picking picture of a kid I don't know?
Was he some relation to the child or something, or?
I think as a father, but so what?
Wow.
It's not. I didn't. The picture got deleted. I don't care.
Apparently,
It's just like weird.
apparently, Gary, they just didn't have time to warm up to your charm. So
I guess. But no. So
I've always had a great experience, somewhat great experience in Canada. I
Really?
mean, yeah, I
which
think
part of Canada?
old Quebec, especially.
Okay.
I never had a problem
In the
there.
city of Quebec, I didn't have any issues, but that's all touristy, so
the old Quebec over at the Chateau Frontenac and the
I
St.
can't speak
Lawrence and
French.
the-
I don't know what you just said.
Well, good. That's good.
That's
We're
good, yeah.
talking.
Right,
We're
we're talking.
So yeah, I thought it was I've always had a great time in Canada.
Okay. I just got lucky.
Poor Gary.
Poor
yeah,
Gary.
yeah, poor me.
Right.
So you've seen this decline in manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're an educated guy.
Yep.
What do you attribute to that decline to?
Well, I mean, I think there's really a couple of things. There's obviously the situation around business taxes, the situation around regulations, and the situation around energy. I think really are the big three. The business taxes are the third or fourth highest in the country. I mean, so they say, welcome to
In the country or the world?
Sorry, in the country.
So you're talking specifically New Hampshire, because I know that Trump has said that the United States has some of the highest business taxes in the world.
Yes, well, but within the United States, we're third or fourth highest within the United States. So our corporate tax rate is high, and then New Hampshire's business taxes are high on top of that.
So it's not okay.
I mean, it's very tough. So you can say welcome to tax-free New Hampshire all you want, but if you're in business, it is, you have the business enterprise tax, which is for the privilege of just being in business, whether you make money or not, and then you have the business profits tax. So I mean,
which is an income tax.
Yeah, which is it's very
for the owners of the business.
It's and I know that when we were in the year that we were in, we did cut the rate on both the enterprise tax
right.
and the business profits tax, and I really think that there should continue to be an erosion away on that tax. So we got to continue to lower that tax.
One of the problems, and I don't see a solution to this, but I know it is a huge problem, is that in towns, Manchester's probably not too bad, but let's just say Ware, because I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
In Ware, you want to start up a chemical business in Ware.
Yeah.
It can take you years to get all the permits.
Yeah.
To get that going, regardless of what you could be making baby powder. It does not matter what the chemical. It doesn't matter if it's manufacturing. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you want to create a factory in the city of in the town of Ware and many other towns, I believe most of them in this state, it's going to take you years to break ground because of all the regulations, all the local regulations, all the state regulations.
Yeah.
Same business person wants to start a business in, I think it's like South Carolina or North Carolina.
Yeah.
They go to the governor or whoever and say they would like to open up a business with 1,000 we're going to employ 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And the answer isn't, well, you got to get this permit and that permit. It says, when do you want to break ground?
Yeah.
There's something different. You know, we've been watching traffic. We've been watching commuter traffic go to Massachusetts. And if you go at 7 o'clock in the morning, you'll see a lot more cars going south than you do going north.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this problem has been going on for 40 years. I don't know. I mean, it's been going on forever. New Hampshire has never been the major jobs market. It's never been the manufacturing hub. People go to Massachusetts. What can
And
New
they
Hampshire
pay a lot
do?
more in Mass, too, you know.
Yeah, but it costs less to live in New Hampshire.
Right.
Somewhat. So I mean, what can we do to turn that traffic around from heading into Massachusetts every day and to keep those people here?
Well, I mean, the business taxes are one thing. The regulations that Gary talked about. If you're a large company, you can maybe go through and you can navigate that. But you know, God help you if you're a small company. But think about it. I mean, if you look, and I used to always listen on the radio, and they had the actor Jeff Daniels on the radio and on TV talking about Michigan. Because Michigan, and I like to use Michigan as an example, got itself in real hot water with all the regulations. And they realized, hey, and my God, I mean, they had the whole automotive industry. There's no reason that Michigan should be in hot water. But they regulated themselves.
Look who's running it.
Yeah, well, they regulated themselves to death.
Right.
Realized too late.
Yeah.
So they started hacking left, right, and center. They hired Jeff Daniels as a pitchman. He's going out there and he's saying, you know, move to Michigan. We've cut all of our regulations. And the thing is, in New Hampshire, we could look at that and we could say, whoa, that's an example that we don't want to follow, but you know, we're doing just the opposite, whether it's haircuts or tanning booths or occupational licensure. I mean, so for example, the radiological one is it comes up. So if you want to, you know, do radiological work, either as a radiological technician or a ultrasonographer or something like that, nuclear medicine, you now have to be licensed in New Hampshire. Now, all 49 other states, they have a national licensure, okay? And it's a very aggressive thing. You have to go in. It's a very difficult testing. It's on a 3-year cycle. You have to go through. You have to renew this thing every 3 years.
Right.
But New Hampshire, in its wisdom, decided, oh, no, we need this extra layer. You also have to be licensed in New Hampshire. So think about it. You've gone through and you're nationally licensed, and you want to go and you want to look for a job, and New Hampshire hospital would like to hire you, but oh no, sorry, you can't come here. You got to come through and you've got to get this extra level of licensure. So whether you're Basque Imaging over in Bedford or a hospital, it's easy for the people who are in New Hampshire to go work in Massachusetts or Maine, but the people who are in Maine and New Hampshire, or Maine and Massachusetts, they can't come here. So
that also brings up the idea that if you were near the border and you wanted to open up a place to radiate people.
Well, yeah, like radiological imaging or anything like that. That's some kind of a clinic.
And it's some sort of a clinic. You're going to go, okay, well, if I do it in New Hampshire, I'm not going to be able to get employees, so I'll just do it in
or it's going to be harder. It reduces the pool of employees that I can get to. And if I want to, let's say I want to bring in some people per day for call work or something like that, again, that limits the amount of pool. And so the people that you do have, they're putting in more time. They're constantly working call, and they're saying, look, we'll go over here because just the whole work environment is better. So it's a regulatory framework, and we do it over and over and over again. You know this.
Yeah.
With over 1,000 bills every year.
Well, it was just, I think it was when you were in, that was a stupid tanning bill.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
There was one woman who allowed, I think, her teenage daughter to get tanned too much.
Right.
And I think something happened. I don't know if something happened to the kid or the mother had skin of leather or some crap. I don't know what it was. But so you're going to regulate the entire state and prevent any child from getting tanning.
Right.
Because one person abused it.
Right.
Now, all those girls or young women that want to be tanned before prom or something like that, you know, they're going to go to Massachusetts.
Right.
So or they're going to put chemicals all over their body.
Right.
And you know, as a chemist, if you put stuff all over your body, that gets into your bloodstream.
Well,
it doesn't just stay on your skin.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of there is not an issue that we could not regulate if you left it to it. And I think part of the problem is what is a strength of New Hampshire, which is its citizen legislature, which I love, because one of the great things about the New Hampshire legislature, where we are representing only a little over 3,000 people, there is an incredible amount of accountability. I mean, if people want to get a hold of me as a legislator or you as a legislator, they're going to call you.
I just give them your phone number.
Well, and I appreciate that, you know. So I like the spin-off business, but you know, so there's this incredible amount of accountability, and there's not a lot of money in New Hampshire politics, which means the corruption is low. These are great things, but I think, you know, what do legislators do? You know, they legislate. Think about it. If you're a watchmaker, what do? You make watches. If you're a composer of music, what do? You compose music. But if you're a legislator, what do? Apparently, you must write legislation. And a good the measure, sometimes people think of a good legislator
is how much legislation
is someone.
through.
And in fact, it's interesting if you go and look at all these different websites that grade you as a legislator and how effective you are, they score you on how many bills you've sponsored. So somebody who sponsors 15 bills, that person gets a very high score because of the average amount of bills is 3. But could you imagine if all 1,000 bills every year became law? I mean, that's 2,000 bills in a biennium. So there has to be a mode of thinking where people understand, look, there has to be a real need. Not every problem requires a legislative solution. But as legislators, that's what they do. They automatically go right to the legislative solution as opposed to other solutions that are out there. That's a problem.
Yeah, I know that years ago I noticed that, you know, if you equated 15 minutes for any one bill to go through the House.
Yeah.
Forget about committee work, because that's an entire chunk of time in and of itself. 15 minutes. That's 100 hours of people's time. Now you've got people up there that have, you know, 10 bills. That's 1,000 hours, or 30 bills. Some of them are sponsors and co-sponsors.
Yeah.
That's, you know, 3,000 hours of people's volunteer time. Because they're proud of it too. Oh, I sponsored this many. Really?
Yeah. And
how much time of people's time? Because there are things that need to get done, but not just because you have some harebrained idea does not mean you have to introduce legislation.
And what does is all the important stuff gets lost in the quagmire, and you get repeat bills. So you could have one issue that's got 6 bills, and they're all kind of variations on a theme. And really, you know, folks should be getting together more on that. But a lot of the legislation, I think, at this point, should be repeal legislation. I mean, so there should be some legislation as real issues arise that do require legislative solutions. But really, I mean, we have so many rules that it's got to be pared away. And one of the things that my parents said to me when I was a little boy growing up is they said, look, you know, Mark, you have to know the law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And
right.
I'm sure, you know, both your parents said the exact same thing.
I used to believe it.
Well, but
it's not true anymore.
Well, that's the thing, because it's a two-sided relationship. As a citizen, you have a responsibility to know the law, but the government has a responsibility to make the law knowable.
Right.
And otherwise, you're just setting people. So it's a two-way relationship. It's not just a one-way thing where you as a citizen, well, you should know this. This is in this statute, and this is. And you look at the plethora of legislation that's out there, and I really do. I have never been a small businessman, and I don't know, to be honest with you, I would have the stomach for it because there's just so much that you have to weed through to get a business going. Like you said, it can take years. So.
Were you there in the judiciary when we deal with this one? There's a repeating decimal in the judiciary. And we've noticed it over time. Towns will find some. Let's say you spilt some oil in your driveway, and they fine you $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
Okay, until you clean it up. You're on vacation. Each day is a separate charge. You know why they do each day as a separate charge?
Tell me why.
Because at I think it's $5,000, you were required to have to be able to be taken to court. Like, in other words, your day a trial.
Right.
If it's only $1,000, there's no right to a trial. So they do it $1,000 a day as separate offenses
to keep it out of the superior court. That's right.
To keep it out of the court system.
Right.
Which is so basically the idea of the $5,000 threshold is that so that this government can't attack you with an unreasonable fine without you having because they can't basically the Constitution says you can't be deprived of property without due process.
Right.
A fine, there's no due process. So they add that little caveat that each fine is a separate offense in the law so that they can get around doing what they're supposed to do.
And you never get your day in court.
And you never get your day in court. You could be fined. Maybe you went on vacation. You did your oil change and you screwed up, or something happened. Whatever. Let's just presume it's just a mistake.
You get $10,000 hit because you're away for 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got
and no recourse in the court.
No recourse.
Yeah.
You can't. While I was on vacation, it's a little oil spill because some town officials that they don't have anything else to do but go around finding things to fine people for, So.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, fundamentally, in my opinion, is not fair.
Well, they get all their authority out of the legislature.
Yeah.
So the legislature is really the one to blame on that. If any local government in New Hampshire is overstepping their authority.
Well, what it is they have.
The question is always quo warranto. Under what authority do you have to tell me what I can do on my property? And nobody ever asked that question.
No, that is. I agree that they have the right to do that on your property. I'll tell you why. Because we went through that. I had to do a bunch of research on that a few years ago. That functionally there are riparian rights. Your property is the right to your property, but you do not. Like, in other words, I got a stream going through the back of my house. Okay, I have every right to go back there and walk in the stream and I won't even say bathe in it because that means soap, but I could jump around the stream or have the kids jump around the stream. That's okay. As soon as I block that stream or pollute that stream, I do not have a right to that because there are riparian rights that go along with the water supply, so that a person downstream should not be affected by what I do on my property.
Right. It's not your water just because it flows over your land.
Correct. But that's also the case with the water that flows under your property. So if you're disposing of oil on your own property and it's getting into the aquifer,
correct,
then you don't have a right.
What if it's not? What if it's not getting into the local aquifer?
I don't think they would know. It could take 10 years, 20 years. I don't know.
I mean, I think you wouldn't know that, so the regulation is set to say, there's a potential for that to happen, and so that's why they do that.
Because I was on a Fish and Game, one of the big ones was, I think it's transmission fluid. Transmission fluid, I guess, seeps right into the aquifer like that. My knuckles messed up. I can't do that anymore. They do have a right, but the thing is it's the... What is that? What is that?
What else do they have a right to do to come onto your property? Thank you, Gary.
Yes, you owe me.
Yeah, from when I was a long time ago when I had long hair.
Looked like from a goat.
No.
No. Anyway.
But what else do they have the right to come onto your property and do? I understand if you're going to pollute the land, you're going to pollute the water. But what else can they come on your property for? And
They have to. I think they have to. Well, most cops have to have probable cause,
Yes.
but not a fish and game cop.
Really?
Correct.
To come onto your property?
Yep.
right, and
I did not know that.
And to search your freezer if they suspect moose meat in there.
But I don't think they can go into your house without a warrant. If there was a freezer outside or something, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So if you're
I
just
would assume so. I would think so.
That's
but
one of the problems. Remember, you're talking about taking away people's rights and
Yeah.
over legislating. Remember a few years ago, I think it was when you were in, we introduced that bill to allow fish cops up north or fish cops to pull people over because up north and what's the one at the north?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, there's no cops. And there was a case where a fish cop pulled over somebody because they were drinking and driving. They could tell, but he had no authority to keep them.
right.
And so we passed a law to try to, but that makes basically a fish cop almost like a super cop.
Well, you'd still have to have probable cause, would you not? I mean, so you're saying that
reasonable suspicion could be.
so you're saying that if a fish and game official can pull you over with no probable cause. I can be just driving down the street with my.
It depends. It depends on what, and this would be tough to prove in court.
Yeah.
But theoretically, if they're pulling you over because they think you're drinking and driving, they have to get a warrant to search your car. If he's pulling you over because he just saw you pull out of a fish hole and he's checking to see if you have a fishing license or fish,
Yeah.
he does not need a permit to search your car.
Hmm.
It's really, really weird.
Yeah. Very.
So it's getting weirder up there. But you have the lobbyist for the county municipal government. I forget the cotton picking jerk's name.
Johnson.
Yeah,
Cordell.
Johnson.
Yep.
And he's the one who keeps adding those little caveats about each day's a separate offense and things like that. And he's got so much influence in the Senate that a lot of stuff gets through that is not kosher. It's really, really horrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean.
That's why I need you back up there.
Well,
To fight stupid crap that
well,
just keeps happening.
It's all about fairness. I mean, if you never have your day in court, or you never have an opportunity to redress something. I mean,
That's basically what it is.
that's just fundamentally not right. So
Yeah, it's fundamentally
so-
unconstitutional and everything else. But it never stops them from doing stuff before.
Yeah.
So, let's see how much time we got.
So what are you running? What district you running for
44.
again?
It's for 44.
44, which is Manchester and
Manchester, Ward 8, Ward 9, and Litchfield.
okay.
Second Amendment.
And your name again?
Mark McLean.
Mark McLean. Good. We want to make sure everybody knows
He's a
that.
white good guy.
I know he is. I
Don't
just
tell him
want
I
to make
said
sure
that.
everybody.
Don't tell him I said that because he's get ahead.
I know. I know. Most of the guests get the same thing.
Right,
Be
yeah.
nice to them.
Yeah. So, Second Amendment. How do you fall in the Second Amendment and why? Which is more important?
Well, I mean, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I think it goes all the way back to the Constitution with good reason. I mean, it's not there to go hunting. I mean, I remember hearing Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, talking when he was putting in restrictions on magazines and things like that down in New York, saying, "You show me where you need an AR-15 or a 20-round magazine or whatever to go deer hunting." And so that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment goes back, to the early colonial militias and the fact that, you needed to have a way to defend yourself against the government if needed. There were a lot of, at the formation of this country, a lot of debates about, the need to have a standing army. Should we have a standing army? You'd just gone through a very tough revolution, war with the British, where they, at the time, were the world superpower. And so having just put down an oppressive government, they were very nervous about establishing another one with a powerful standing army. So,
Do you know the history of the dislike, the inherent dislike, or the history of history of an inherent dislike of a standing army, or distrust is probably a better word.
I mean, maybe not as much as you, Gary, but I do know that
Nobody knows as much as me, right? You haven't met anybody? No. Okay.
But I mean, I just it just, I think it just stems from the fact, that the army was there, and it repressed the people at the time of the revolution, and they were actually building themselves in people's homes, and
They left
so
the king. They left the king behind. The king had created all of these situations where they did have standing armies, and and his people were unarmed, and that's why our patriots left. They came here. The Declaration of Independence was pretty clear. If anybody out there has never read the Declaration of Independence, I think it's probably one of the three greatest writings in history.
What was interesting, at the Battle of Bennington, which is, where General John Stark was,
Right.
I believe it was General Burgoyne was coming down, and he says, hey, I think these people are on side. And it turns out it was not. It was General Stark with his militia, and they started firing. Oh my God, the farmers have guns, and that's something that would have never happened back in England. So here was Burgoyne thinking, oh yeah, this is great, and all of a sudden he's being routed by Stark and really just regular citizens that are armed to the teeth. So
I think it's also. If you go back to the Roman times, it was Caesar who came back from his conquest in Europe and came back, and I think there's an inherent distrust, because if you had a general that was in charge of an army, they basically just says, "Oh, I'm taking over.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah.
Okay, so a standing army makes it. Is a direct threat to a citizen legislature.
Right.
So in New Hampshire, if you had a standing army of 40,000 guys, and you have a citizen legislature of 400,
yeah,
then if the 40,000 guys with guns decide that the legislature isn't doing what they want, what happens? And it was that it's a balance of power. You can't have a standing army sitting in a country and not realize that is a direct threat to liberty.
right. And so, and so the Second Amendment was basically, and it even says it right there, understanding the importance of a militia. And at the time, there were militias, and everybody was expected to be armed and to be able to support that in case the standing army would be used against the people. So,
Right, yeah.
So that's why it's important. And I think, it's interesting. I was out at the Londonderry fishing game with former Representative Catherine Prudhomme O'Brien.
I love her.
Oh, she's awesome. And she had some folks over, and, one of them had actually been at Tiananmen Square. Okay?
Oh, wow.
And so he was talking, and, he said one thing. He said, man, if we had the Second Amendment in China, there would have been no Tiananmen Square.
Exactly.
And so at the core, he understands, okay? He understands. And it's not about, the right to go hunting. If the moose population withers away to nothing tomorrow, under good husbandry, we may decide to not issue moose hunting permits.
Right.
We don't have the right to hunt moose per se, but we do have the right to bear arms, and that's what it's for. So that's my understanding, anyways.
That is a very good understanding, because I know that, like when you said, Cuomo said about hunting, and that's been going on. That's one of the reasons I ran to begin with, is because I kept hearing in the news and national propaganda radio, ABC, NBC, all the national radio and TV programs would always defer to, well, why do we need those guns for hunting? And like you said, it has nothing to do with hunting.
Right.
Hunting is irrelevant.
Yeah.
You could, because if you allow
their mindset isn't into protecting themselves, protecting their life, their liberty.
They believe the government is good, and therefore bigger government is better.
Right. Protect their property, their family, the state, and themselves. I mean, this is the key to owning a firearm, to be able to protect yourself from anyone, especially a tyrannical government.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the remember what I was going to say?
No, but you're welcome.
It was really good. It was really wow. You guys missed out on.
Oh,
a lot.
yeah.
It was,
Wow.
It was freaking,
Pop that bubble.
Only he knows. Only he knows how great it was.
oh yeah, it was
Oh,
awesome.
wow,
you
man.
guys missed out.
It was really good.
Well, we're basking in the afterglow, though,
Yes,
Gary.
thank God we dodged.
What other issues are important to you?
Well, I mean,
Let's see.
for me, it at the core of it comes down to the taxes and therefore the budget. I really think that we've got to. There's a lot of debate about the budget right now. Before I went in, the budget was $10.5 billion. When you and I were in together that one term, it was 11.2. This time around, we'll see how it shakes out. Let's say it's 12. So probably the next one, if we continue on this rate, is going to be 12.7, 12.8. So I really think that we've got to start that in a state that has just a little over 1 million people. I don't think that really is sustainable long term. Some of the budget is hard coded, debt servicing and entitlements, but a lot of it, there has to be a way to find some efficiencies. And oftentimes in the legislature, we deal with the budget on the backside. Where the real gains, I think, are going to be made is on the front side. Because if you are in the Department of Public Safety or you're in the Department of Transportation, you know better than I do where the efficiencies are to be found. When at my company where I make automotive headlights, they come to me and let's say I'm selling that lamp for $1. They come to me and say, Mark, next year you got to find a way to sell that headlamp for 95 cents. They don't tell me how to do it because they don't have a clue. But they know that I'm the process expert. I'm going to go in and I'm going to find it. And so I really think it's incumbent on the governor at this point to go to these department heads on the front end of the budget and say, look, it's my expectation that you're going to be coming forth with 2% savings in each successive budget. And that can be done. I mean, anybody who says, no, there's no waste in our organization, no way. I mean, and the good news is that the state has adopted, there is a thing called Lean New Hampshire, and so that they're getting into adopting the lean methodology, but I really think that they've got to allow that to further penetrate the culture.
Do you think funding all-day kindergarten, all-day kindergarten for
That's a trick question. He's going to represent Manchester.
Well-
and Manchester saves money if we voted in.
Well, although they're going to increase.
Well, that increased the budget by a
They're going to increase the school budget by that. They voted to increase it by $2 million, even though the kindergarten funding bill hasn't passed. But at the end of the day, I don't see that as a huge priority. For me, if you bring that in, and that's going to be, what, $12 million over the biennium, Gary, something like that?
Initially. But you've ever seen a state or federal program that declined?
Exactly. But you look at that and you say, and I looked in the House budget, I didn't see any business tax cuts in the House budget.
Right.
Okay? So I really think, as I said, business taxes, regulation, energy costs. Business taxes, regulation, energy costs. We got to keep hammering those nails over.
How about increasing
and
revenue with new companies coming to New Hampshire rather than leaving?
yeah,
Well,
leaving,
you can.
leaving much more rapidly than the ones
Have
that
you
come
thought of getting together with some business people and figuring out what regulations New Hampshire, if they X A, B, C, and D out, and locally,
Right.
like in other words, if somebody came to New Hampshire and says they want to start a business, what would be the obstacles that they would run into that we can start with chipping away at? So if somebody says, hey, I want to start a business, I think I'll go to New Hampshire because the people are super cool. And so that they can actually start breaking ground within months instead of years.
And I haven't done that yet, to be honest with you. My focus has been more on the energy side, because I think that as a legislature, we have the power, if enough people come in and support it, to lower the business taxes. If there is agreement amongst us tomorrow, then you can pass a business tax cut. If there is agreement amongst us tomorrow, we can cut a regulation, or bring one in for that matter. So, but on energy is, I think, the toughest nut to crack, and I think it's the one that is the most confusing for many people, just because a lot of people don't know where to go on it. But I think it's the one that's actually hitting us the hardest. I mean, if you look at our commercial rate in New Hampshire for energy, it's 14.5 cents.
Right.
And if you look at Pennsylvania's commercial rate, it's 9. If you look at Arkansas's commercial rate, it's 7. Our industrial rate is 12. Arkansas's industrial rate is 5. Okay? So there is no way.
What if we took that militia and just went over and took over Arkansas?
No, just.
Well, they would have their own militia too. So, I guess who has the best militia?
I think we do.
Well, then maybe we
Don't
should
we?
try that.
Yeah, we do.
How about energy?
Can we-
When you say energy, you talking electricity, natural gas?
I'm
PSNH, you talking
I'm
shutting
talking-
down these generating plants or opening them up?
I'm talking just electricity. The bottom line is, if you're in manufacturing or technology and you've got that hanging over your head, then you have got to identify right out of the get-go efficiencies in a lot of other areas, because you are essentially double Arkansas with respect to your commercial and industrial energy rates. And so, the big recent example that I point to is Sig Sauer, that got the sidearm contract for the military. And so they have a facility in Newington, and you listen to the CEO of Sig Sauer talk about his people. He loves his New Hampshire people. He loves his New Hampshire people. And that military contract, to my understanding, is going to be 100% fulfilled out of the Newington plant. But the spin-off business, so civilians who want that firearm, and that's going to happen the instant it becomes, the official side.
Right.
That spin-off business, rather than expand the Newington plant, they're going to build a plant in Arkansas.
Right.
Okay, why? And
Cost of energy.
that's it. That's what he cited. And whether you're at OSRAM, that has impacted me at OSRAM, that has impacted Sig Sauer, that has impacted Freudenberg, that has impacted BAE. All these New Hampshire companies are being impacted by that, but you just can't pass a bill to make that go away. I mean, so there's many things that we have to do.
What I don't understand, and maybe you can explain this to me. Personally, I don't know. Do I get time?
Do you think Northern Pass is the solution or the
Is it
other
helpful?
problem?
I think Northern Pass is part of the solution. The problem is we don't have a cohesive overall. You're taking away 8,000 megawatts from ISO New England. Northern Pass is 1,000 megawatts. But you just got rid 3 years ago, of Vermont Yankee. That's 600 megawatts right there. Right. So your replacement rate is nowhere near what it needs to be. And we passed the divestiture bill thinking, okay, we're going to divide up the distributors from the generators. It's going to allow market forces to come into play. And so there's going to be competition amongst the generators because the distributors are going to buy from the cheapest guys. But at the same time, you have the renewable portfolio standard, which is currently at 17% of energy has to come from that. By 2025, it goes to 25%. So that's not
but Northern Pass does that.
Northern Pass is not counted as
that's what we just changed
renewable.
It so it's renewable because it's hydro.
Maybe because and it's very complicated. I don't pretend to be an expert, but there are 4 classes within the RPS, and hydro pre-2006 is in it, and small scale hydro post-2006 that can demonstrate it's not damaging the environment or anything, that counts. But Northern Pass is my understanding. Northern Pass, even though it's renewable, it totally does not count towards that 17%.
Hey, Mark,
and it adds an extra $1 billion to the
Mark,
Canadian government.
You're awesome. I really hope you get up there. Which committee are you going to try for?
Well, I mean, I would try for energy. I tried for that actually when I went in the first time, but as a freshman, you know, you don't get to pick.
Yeah.
So I ended up on judiciary with you. So, but
Wow.
but
It seems like you regretted that. Huh?
no, actually, but you know,
Not
I'll
the
tell
first
you,
maybe.
Yeah,
I learned so much about the court system that for me it was an incredibly positive experience. And if at the end of the day, at this point, I just want to go back. I'll serve on whatever committee, you know, they say I have to serve
Hey,
on.
we got to go. Mark McLean, good luck. When is the election?
May 23rd.
May 23rd. Get out there and vote for him because he's awesome. We'll see you guys next week.